Hello, and welcome to Culture Conversations, the podcast where we explore the people side of work. I'm your host, Megan Robinson. For years, I've found myself deep in discussions about workplace engagement with industry experts. Now I get to share this wisdom with all leaders, new and experienced, on their journeys to build cultures that maximize potential. We spend so much of our lives at work. Let's make it a place where our teams can grow and succeed. Hello, welcome to Culture Conversations. I'm Megan Robinson, and I am thrilled to have today's guest. We are going to talk about social entrepreneurship. I love entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is going to be fascinating on how your organization can really start to harness the power of the people, what that means and looks like, and how we can make some tangible steps. My guest today is Nick, and Nick is currently the founder of CultureCon, where you can make connections, grow perspective, and change cultures. Nick Lombardino was born and raised in Madison, Wisconsin. He's an imaginative social entrepreneur and community builder with extensive experience scaling organizations that drive that positive change for individuals, companies, and of course, communities. With widespread professional service experience, Nick has been in leadership roles spanning from marketing, business development, operations, human resources, and finance. I think you've touched just about everything there, Nick. In addition to his work at CultureCon, Nick's a faculty member at Edgewood College. He teaches social entrepreneurship and small business management. Prior to joining CultureCon full-time, he was a member of the leadership team at Farwell, responsible for creating, developing, and implementing organizations' strategies. Outside of work and during work, apparently, Nick's passionate about cribbage, soul music, lunch buffets, and just about anything you'd find at a senior living community. I guess we have that in common since we had an extensive conversation about cribbage. Welcome, Nick.
Thanks for having me, Megan.
Oh, I'm so excited. So you brought up this topic of social entrepreneurship. Tell me a little bit, what exactly is social entrepreneurship? And I love that when I asked you, what are you passionate about? You're like, social entrepreneurship. This is it. This is what we need to be talking about. Tell me more. What is it? Why do we need to talk about it?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think to drill into social entrepreneurship, we have to start with more broader level entrepreneurship. So I've always been drawn to one of the most basic definitions of entrepreneurship, which is being able to identify new opportunities that can create some sort of profit. And a lot of the times this takes the shape of creating new ventures to be able to attack those new opportunities, but it doesn't always have to be new ventures. It can be new processes for an existing product or service. It could be identifying a new market segment. But by and large, we tend to think of entrepreneurship as starting new ventures. So for the sake of this conversation, maybe let's stick with that definition. So if that's entrepreneurship, there's also something called corporate entrepreneurship. So corporate entrepreneurship is the ability for a company to be able to leverage their own connections and resources and the ideas of their employee base to develop new and novel ideas to create more economic gain or profit. So then just to take it one more step further down, corporate intrapreneurship is another word for corporate entrepreneurship. Now we tag in the social piece. So thank you for bearing with me as we kind of drill down into it. Corporate social entrepreneurship is doing all the things that we just talked about with corporate entrepreneurship, but now adding in a layer of whatever new and novel ideas that we're going after. Not only do we want it to provide some sort of economic gain, but simultaneously be working towards solving some sort of social or environmental issue. So that's really what gets us down to the root of social entrepreneurship, is the ability to help your company have economic gain while also solving some sort of social or environmental problem.
I want to see like the Venn diagram of all of these, or there's like the triple, right? That's where it's the intersection of it. So
exactly.
Knowing that you have this entrepreneurship or intrapreneurship and this social aspect, what's the benefit of really combining the two together?
Well, I think particularly now we have generations in the workforce that I don't think it's overly dramatic to say that they've grown up in environments where there have been a lot of existential problems at the forefront of their daily lives. So many of us want to feel like we're doing something to make positive change, right? So being a force for good in the world. And that is increasingly becoming an expectation of the work that we do. We want to work for companies that we feel are virtuous, that are aligned with our personal values, and hopefully have very discrete products and services that are helping to solve social and or environmental problems. So with that, I think the business imperative for a lot of organizations is to be able to create that environment to maximize employee engagement, right? So I think that is one of the biggest momentum shifts in today's working economy is this idea of being able to have fully present and engaged employees also means that the company is thinking about how do we tap into opportunities to solve some of these social and environmental problems.
It sounds so pessimistic of myself, we'll say jaded, but it almost feels like this, you can take it's positive or negative, like this easy way to check the box. Like, okay, we're doing social things, it's up to you guys, and almost taking that responsibility off of the company and forcing it onto someone else. But at the same time, it's this incredible opportunity for employees to have something that they're excited and passionate about and kind of give them that why that they're missing so much.
Oh, couldn't agree more. And I think we're getting pretty good at identifying organizations that are maybe dipping their toe in a way that feels disingenuous, and perhaps doing it as more of a tactic to either create a halo effect to attract talent to their organization, or to try and give this aura or image like, hey, look at us, we're doing good things. I think we're getting pretty good at knowing how to suss that out. But ultimately, however an organization chooses to deploy these types of social entrepreneurship efforts, it has to be tied back to some overarching um, company values, right? It's got to align with their strategy. It's got to align with what their stated values and behaviors are. And if it's not, it is going to feel very disjointed. And on the extreme, it's going to feel totally disingenuous.
I love that. I love tying it back to those core values, understanding. And to be real, you have that balance of those values, but you also have that balance of economic gain, as you so delicately put it, of having that profit piece to it.
And I don't, yeah, totally. I don't think companies have to shy away from that. You know, a lot of companies will say either directly, like we have a culture of innovation, or there are other values that kind of lead to that. But you know, really, at the end of the day, innovation is a value where you're essentially saying that you invite and you value diverse perspectives, and taking those diverse perspectives and using them to create new and novel ideas to help your company learn and grow. So social entrepreneurship is totally baked into a value like that, right? Like we want to for these ideas to flourish and to really help solve social and environmental problems, there's going to have to be a level of economic gain for the company. Because if this is just a money suck and it doesn't tie back to any sort of performance initiatives, then it's all for naught. But that's really that intersection where social and environmental good and economic opportunity overlap. There's a lot of research and data to show that that's actually where the most profitable companies are coming from, just because there's so much of a demand among the greater population around solving some of these huge issues that we have related to social and environmental problems.
I was just watching a video yesterday about a company that really wanted to push in that social, economic, environmental issues. They're like, great, here's our plant. It's totally toxic. We're going to have to close it down. And all the engineers are like, we can't do that. Oh my gosh, like, can you guys make it, more environmentally friendly? Can you do it? And then they're like, okay, we've got two things that we don't want, right? We don't want to shut the plant down. We don't want to have to cancel all those jobs and lay people off, but we also want to make sure that we're helping the environment. Lo and behold, everyone went back to the drawing board and they found a solution. When you really start to put both of those options and require and demand it. And of course, turns out the solution was actually more profitable than the way they were doing it before.
Than the way they were doing it before. Yes. One of my favorite stories, to piggyback off of that, is Levi Strauss. So they, over the years, they've put a lot of funding and resources into their own culture of innovation and research and development. And sometimes the way that they like to generate new ideas is just by asking questions to certain departments or team members. And one of the questions that they asked their R&D department was, what would happen if we removed water from the gene manufacturing process? And water, I found this out, millions and millions of gallons of water go into manufacturing genes. So I think you can see where this is going from an environmental standpoint. So they asked this question of like, what would happen if we just removed water completely from the manufacturing process? So the R&D team went to work and was able to find a way to essentially do the same thing that water does in the manufacturing process, but doing it with some sort of like mineral stone instead. And the outcome is actually the genes have some new texture profile to it that is super comfortable and aesthetically pleasing, that now this product line, Levi's waterless jeans, is like one of the most profitable products in their entire portfolio. And so not only are they able to say now, hey, this is how much water we are saving from just taking it out of the manufacturing line, but oh, by the way, this is like a flagship product of ours now. And it all started with just asking a question of like, what if we took water out of it? What would that be like? Right. So I love that story.
I love that story, but I love that example of an organization that's really embodying some of those great ways of implementing it, because asking great questions is so so simple in a way, but so challenging. And I find in a lot of the coaching that I'm doing, being able to ask effective questions, being able to wait and listen is one of those things that's skipped over very, very quickly. I was doing a session or a workshop on strategic development and how to be a better strategic leader or problem solving. Like if you're not asking the right questions, you're never going to be able to get to the right answers. And that happens, it shows up in every facet of the business. Go ahead.
No, couldn't agree more. And I think there's probably something to be said too about a company culture where it's conducive to asking questions that kind of challenge the status quo, right? So like you're asking, in the case with the Levi Strauss, you're asking a question that if we're gonna answer it, it's probably gonna shake things up in a big way. And it might go great and it might be awful. So I think there's something to be said too for creating a culture where there's permission to be able to experiment with questions and have, I think in your world, Megan, what would you call it? It's like permission to fail from a leadership standpoint, right? Like we acknowledge that we're going to do something within these four walls, and some of it's not going to be a great use of our time or resources, but it's a learning opportunity for us to be able to improve moving forward. So I think that's baked into this Levi story as well. It's just by asking that question, the employees in that research and development department probably felt safe to be able to use their time and energy to go out and try something and know that there's not going to be a massive blowback if it doesn't go as planned. You know what I mean? So like
Yeah.
for every one great success story, there's probably a lot of ones that just didn't go well, right? And so that's something that I guess like one of the things that I've always admired about your work is like help me peek under the hood a little bit for this kind of culture, this permission to fail. Like when you're working with executives and they want to help be the best leader that they can possibly be and make their employees and direct reports feel like they have the psychological safety and permission to go out and try and create share their ideas in a way where they're not afraid of what might happen. Like what are some leadership development attributes and components to creating a culture where employees feel safe to share their ideas and go off and experiment in innovative ways.
Oh, I love that. And it really starts to intersect, I think, for me, what an individual can do with what that organizational culture is doing. And I think you had a great point when you were kind of pivoting and we're dancing between the same subject, essentially. And I even look at it as, is it my personal responsibility or is it the organization's responsibility to create that culture? And for me, I always look at it as an individual responsibility of being the kind of leader that you want to be. How you
Mm,
show up in that organization is 100% within your control and up to you. If they are not having the right culture for it, you may need to adjust something to be appropriate in the space you're at, but you still have permission to do just about however you want to behave and whatever results you want to get. So I love being the person to ask the question. Even if you don't have a culture or environment that it's safe or you have that permission to fail, you can ask those questions in really soft ways that are not attacking, that are just with that curiosity. If you just said,
mm.
look, I know this is a crazy idea and you guys might hate it, you can even hedge it a little bit when you know it's outside of that comfort zone. But what if we did create, like, what would that do? Not even like, how could we, but what if we did do this? And then you can get into the how later, but giving yourself that permission to ask it.
Got it. So it has less to do with feeling like you have permission from an organizational level or managerial level, and the onus and accountability is more on yourself as a contributing team member to be able to bring that out in a way that feels exploratory and still in line, I'm assuming, with organizational goals, but to not let that like scare you away from being able to at least bring up an idea and just see how it sinks.
I think that so many emerging leaders, and I will even say some of the conversations I'm having with really senior leaders, they're afraid to ask those questions. They're
Mm,
hesitant, and in a way, they're holding back. And I see that happen over and over again. Whether they're not comfortable in their role, they think it might be a stupid question. It's one of actually my favorite tactics when I was leading a team. I still lead a team, but I'll throw it out there. I'm like, guys, look, here's a dumb idea. Let me throw out the worst, the stupidest idea that I can first. And it's given everyone else permission to make something better. Like, okay, we've set the bar down here. You guys did, but giving that opportunity to ask those questions is 100% something that you can do, no
love
matter
it.
what the rest of the organization, how they want to respond to that is totally up to them. But if you don't keep asking those questions, if you don't keep raising your hand, if you don't keep sharing, I think the organization is going to lose out much, much faster. Plus, you haven't created that leadership around you. You have your own
Mm,
microculture. Other people are going to know what to expect. And I guarantee you will start to change and evolve it the more that you do that.
that's amazing. Yeah, it seems like sometimes one of the barriers to an individual even wanting to voice new ideas is they feel like there's so many other competing priorities that are in front of them that to them it's like I don't even know if I want to share this idea because my ability to even mature it is so mitigated by all this other stuff that's on my desk right now. What would you say to somebody who would want to use that maybe as an excuse for bringing a new idea forward is just them saying like, I got so much work on my plate right now that I don't even know if I wanna bring up this new idea.
That's totally fair. You can say that. There's no reason
Hmm.
you can't. And honestly, that gives people more of the picture. Give them more of the context that you're coming from with it. Like, hey, this might be a crazy idea. This may be too radical, but I was thinking about it. That to
Love it.
me is a huge leadership opportunity. And no one can take that away from you. Any organization, if you're sharing something, and I look at it as almost hedging it a little bit or giving it that soft landing, go for it. I always encourage people to go for it. But you're also doing it in a way that you're not expecting someone say, well, I
Right.
had this idea, so now you better take it and run with it. You're opening up a conversation and a dialogue.
And what have you seen if we're sticking with, let's just say, building a culture of innovation? what are certain tactics or strategies that you've seen deployed by leaders or organizations to help these ideas come forward in organic and natural ways?
I think the first thing is that curiosity. If you are not leading with curiosity upwards as much as downwards, if you're not having that authentic, curious spirit, it's hard for other people to adopt it. And
Mm,
with that curiosity comes a lot of vulnerability. You're
mm,
throwing things out there you do not have answers to. You are not
hmm.
expected to have the answers to that. And I think that alone starts creating that culture and that opportunity for innovation, for other ideas
So
to
my,
other
so like,
people.
oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm cutting you
Oh
off.
no.
I'm just getting excited. So it's essentially modeling the behavior that you want to see among others yourself. And that a lot of times when it relates to sharing ideas, there's a level of vulnerability associated with it. So that's powerful. Yeah, okay.
The other one I'm going to say is listening. And that comes from every level as well. Particularly the more senior you are, the more you're willing to listen to other people, at least acknowledge it, address, follow through on something. If someone gave a great idea, they shared that with you. And if you're not honoring it and saying, oh, yeah, 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 sure, I'll take a look into that, and then never follow up on
Mm,
it, you've now killed that innovation. You've killed that opportunity. You've killed that person's spark.
right, right.
Even if the answer is no, that's absolutely okay. You do not have to take 100% of the ideas, but being able to follow up and close that loop and recognize it and then keep that encouraging, listening goes a long way. Same thing if you're the one that's that peon in the organization that's coming up with idea after idea and you're not listening and refining and learning from it, you're missing out that opportunity. Because I think what you're also talking about is that social entrepreneurship is that opportunity for growth because you have this passion and this excitement. And there is such a way to build up your business acumen that goes along with it that I think
Mm,
has such high potential, that critical thinking, the filters, the questions you're being asked about it. If you're really reflecting on it and learning from those opportunities, you are such a better leader. You're such a better employee. You yourself have grown so much uh, from every aspect of it.
that's powerful.
Well, I did want to ask you what are a couple of practical steps that organizations, I know we started bouncing around a lot, but I do want to get into like a little bit of the nitty gritty of what can organizations do to really encourage the social entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I think I agree with you, Megan, in the sense that like so much of social entrepreneurship has to do with an individual's accountability to themselves, first and foremost, to know enough about their intrinsic motivators, their strengths, causes that are they're passionate about. Because so much of that will drive ideation around social or environmental change that you want to use company resources and time towards, right? So it's like, to your point, not relying on the company necessarily to gift you the perfect environment to let these ideas come to life. Like at the end of the day, it's up to you to be able to know how to um, express these ideas. So I couldn't agree more with that. I have heard some cool kind of like processes and tactics that companies deploy to try and help individuals, um, kind of get more in sync with these elements of personality traits and whatnot. So sometimes companies will help offer some of those questionnaires, personality trait questionnaires that tease out some of your strengths, and then creating conversations around, okay, now that we know about how you're wired, how are we going to help bring that to life within the context of how we work together? And sometimes that's really cool to figure out how like causes that are important to you can then come into the work environment. So that's neat. Another cool tactic that I've heard companies deploy, um, I don't want to say hackathons because this might seem a little bit over engineered, but essentially creating carved out time. Maybe it's one day a month or every other month where employees have permission to stop doing what's on your plate at the moment and go work in teams to ideate together. And so this doesn't necessarily have to be social entrepreneurship. It could just be corporate entrepreneurship as well, but being able to break out of the everyday grind, so to speak, and know that there's dedicated time for you to be able to reflect yourself and work with others on what are some new and novel ideas that we could help bring to life within the context of our business environment. So these aren't things that you can deploy overnight necessarily, right? Like it takes a lot of um, creating a business case on why we're going to align to some sort of strategic initiative or corporate value where it makes sense that we're doing stuff like this. But those were just two cool tactics that I've learned over the years that really help employees feel like, okay, cool. Like this does feel like I can bring my full authentic self to work in a way that is aligned with corporate goals, but also things that are unique to me. And that's a pretty powerful intersection.
I love that balance because in organization, there is a point of, hey, this is all nice and good ideas, but it does take a real investment and a real commitment to it. And that's the one thing we didn't, I was like tip of my tongue for everything else we're talking about. I'm like, there's a point where you have to kind of put your money where your mouth is on this one. And if you are willing to dedicate a day, dedicate a percentage of time, put it in people's goals as part of those resources and those expectations and those opportunities. Um, it takes a little bit. And I've looked at organizations. I'm like, what is the capacity of your team? Like truly understanding an organization's capacity, and are people, everyone's busy. Are they busy doing the right things? Are they burning out? How much of this is, if you're in professional services, client or product work, how much space and time are you dedicating to other things? And I will always look at that time allocation as a critical component of what an organization's values are. So whether it's spending time on innovation, or I will even throw it out there, spending time as leadership. In leadership, if you are always an individual contributor and you're trying to run a team, yeah, your time's capped. You got to figure out where you're going to prioritize it. But giving them go ahead.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, and
Yeah.
and really too, like the if we're using the hackathon example, it's the company needs to understand too that like by allocating time to do these types of sessions, um, the the positive outcome isn't only the possibility that new and novel ideas are going to funnel through it. There are so many other ripple effect positive outcomes by just being able to help your teammates be in community with one another, learn more about one another, collaborate with one another, right? So there's so many elements of employee engagement that are fed into these types of dedicated sessions that are completely separated from the expectation like, oh, we have to create new ideas just for some sort of company goal, right?
Yeah.
There's so much cohesion, so much collaboration that happens in those events as well that it can't be understated.
Oh my gosh. I'll even throw it out. I was just chatting actually with a senior leader that was putting together their annual kind of leadership team meeting, and what are they going to talk about? How are they going to put together a strategic plan? And being able to infuse some of this into those conversations can do wonders, because sometimes you don't even know where to start, right? Just having the curiosity, just having the innovation of the what if questions,
Right.
especially if you are that business owner, if you are, wearing so many hats already, you're not taking the extra time to explore and ask that and getting those ideas from the
Right.
team. You can still prioritize, you can still choose what you want to invest in, but getting the conversation started is the first step. Nick, this has been such a wonderful conversation. I'm so glad we were able to connect and to schedule this. Do you have any other last bit of advice or tips that you want to share?
Well, first of all, it was an honor to be included. So thank you so much for having me, Megan. Something that a quote actually that I've been thinking about more and more these days. I just like to share it with you. My friend Mo Cheeks was the one who told it to me, and he's actually in the room with me right now, which is making me extra excited to share it with you. But it's a quote by Howard Thurman, who was a civil rights leader and theologian. And Howard Thurman said, "Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive, and go do that. Because what the world needs are people who have come alive." And so I really love that quote, of course, in the context of social entrepreneurship, and also with what you were sharing too, Megan, about the accountabilities being more on the individual level. I think that quote is pretty powerful.
I love that. Well, I couldn't say it better. So this is your call. This is your call to come alive, not find your passion, follow it, or any of that jazz, but really find the things that excite you and ask those questions, get those tough conversations started, open up those opportunities, and have some more culture conversations. Thank you so much for joining us. And until next time. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Culture Conversations. I'm your host, Megan Robinson, founder of eLeader Experience, a professional leadership development company. Today, we shared actionable ideas to navigate the evolving workplace landscape, compete for talent, and build cultures that maximize potential. If you're looking to learn more about how to support your organization's leaders, you can learn more about our work at eleaderexperience.com. Now get out there and contribute positively to your organization's culture with your own conversations.